The Marvel Cinematic Universe. The biggest pop culture movement since the Beatles, $22.5 billion at the box office, and we found the one guy who doesn't have a clue what we're talking about. With two fellow MCU nerds to help guide his hand along the way, one thing is for certain, we're with him until the end of the line. Welcome to Colin Brain versus the MCU. On your left, hello and welcome to your new favourite MCU podcast designed for your ear holes. That's right, episode 6. We made it to the Avengers. What an emotional journey it's been so far. We've had some great films. We've had some flawed films. We've had disagreements. We've had unity. We've had grapes fighting over seals. And special guest stars such as Jolin Brain and Stanley Urchin. So before we kick off proceedings, please allow me to introduce my fellow co-hosts for this week. I like to think of myself as the Nick Fury of Colin Brain versus the MCU. A man who had an idea to bring together Earth's greatest podcasters to form a supergroup of sorts that would change the podcasting world together. Or at least have a laugh whilst doing so. So if I am Nick Fury, then he is my Maria Hill. It's Robert Trott. Rob, say hello.
Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. I'm excited, George.
Oh,
and I also panicked because as you were reading that, I was fiddling with the radiator next to me, and my thumb got wedged between the bit at the end and the sort of weird, shapy bit in the middle of a radiator. And I thought, that's me, I'm done. So I just panicked and did Alan Silvestri's score at you.
I'm done.
Good start.
Oh, Christ. And lastly, just a man with a big beard. Take that away. And what is he? Well, he'd be a good friend and most importantly, a good man and a virgin. To the MCU, it's Colin Jolin Brain. Colin, say hello.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
So I'm very good. How are you both?
Great, man, yeah. Feeling good. I'm excited for this.
Rob, how are you?
We've established how I am. I'll get my thumb stuck in radiators.
The radiator's nowhere near me, so I'm safe at the moment.
Oh, I wouldn't expect anything less. So, Colin, you have pretty much no presence on social media, do you?
Not personally, no.
It's been quite a blessing that you're not on social media, I guess, because even though you're now sort of getting round to watching all these films, you're still obviously completely in the dark as to what's coming up. So I wanted to ask you a question. So obviously we've now met Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Thor, and Captain America.
Yeah.
Do you know, or can you name any other superheroes that have films in the MCU? And I will not say whether you're correct or incorrect.
Okay. I mean, yeah, even though I'm not on social media, I still haven't remained 100% spoiler free just because, spending time on YouTube and seeing thumbnails and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure Spider-Man comes back at some point, and that he has his own movie. I can name other superhero movies, but I'm not sure if any of them are going to be Marvel or if they're in the MCU, because it's... I think, is Doctor Strange one of them? I don't know if that's in the MCU, but that was...
Doctor Strange, interesting, okay.
That's definitely one that I remember seeing, which I thought had the Marvel banner on the poster whenever that came out. Let's think, standalone. No. Ant-Man and all that stuff. I don't know if that's in the MCU, but I remember that being a thing a while ago, which made me giggle. I think... I can't remember if you mentioned that maybe they had just bought the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four again or something like that, or you had mentioned something.
I guess we can say that, yes, they have got the rights to Fantastic Four and X-Men back, but we have not seen any films of them yet. Be a couple of years away yet.
Yeah, and I do know that there's another Iron Man, at least one more as far as I know. I gather there's more Thor films, there's more Captain Americas. There isn't another Hulk, right? Because of the whole he can only be in, not a standalone movie thing.
Team up films or films that are not his. Yeah.
And Black Panther, I don't know if that's part of the MCU, but I remember that.
Oh yeah, good old Black Panther. Yeah, maybe not. We'll see. So, and as always, we're doing this over Zoom. So, Rob, would you care to let our listeners know what your screen name is this week? I don't know why this is a segment. You've brought it upon yourself.
It was going to be like a little in-joke between us, and you have brought it to everyone.
Yeah, but after Fucky Barnes last week, I mean...
We had to do Fucky Barnes.
George saying it on last week's one, that was coming back in my brain throughout the week and just just making me laugh my head off.
This week, I am the god of mischief on a night out, Loki.
Oh my God.
I'm not. I'm really not.
Oh.
Thank you for that choice. So just before you joined in on the Zoom call, me and Colin were saying you were spoiled for choice this week. I thought you were going to do something with Tesseract or testicles, but you have gone with blokey. So
Yeah, standard.
So Rob, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here. So in our first 5 episodes, during your rewatch of the MCU film so far, has there been anything you've changed your mind on? Be it like a film, a character, a set piece. So, either previously something that you used to dislike and now have a change of heart, or vice versa, anything you previously liked that you've now approached it maybe a bit more critically for the podcast that you've realised, that's not as good as I thought it was.
I would say Iron Man 2 has been the biggest surprise. Because generally I put that down as one of the worst films. And watching it this time, I had so much fun with it. And especially the whole end sequence. The Whiplash thing was still disappointing. It still felt like it was too quick.
Yeah.
But the fight in the Peace Garden, the flying around the expo, the little kid when Tony lands in front of him and saves it. Yeah, brilliant.
I'm completely the same, actually. I think I said it on the pod as well. That was always my... Even when we were doing the rewatch, I was sort of like, oh, this scene's coming up. And I found myself invested for most of it. All up until Whiplash turns up at the end. It was strange.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Skip the compliments. Let's get on with it.
So, as always, you relax, boys, as I will now provide a background to the film to both Colin and our listeners. And as always, Colin, please feel free to interject. And me and Rob, I'm sure he will be able to help if you have any questions. So, the Avengers. So plans for the Avengers were around all the way back from 2008, really, when Iron Man was released. It was more of a dream than an actual greenlit film, because creating a shared universe around 5 different blockbusters, all before bringing all of our heroes together in one big film, was essentially just unheard of. But Marvel did approach the whole project with baby steps, so to speak. So they hired a guy called Zach Penn to create what they were calling at the time like the MCU Bible. He was asked about it in a recent interview and is quoted as saying, "I was officially attached to the Avengers in 2006. For me, it was a 4-year process. During that time, my job was to keep an eye on all the other movies, write in stuff that could be set up and paid off, and with the help of the Marvel executives, create an overarching story, or a Bible, for the 5 movies, so we would know where we were going and what the Avengers would be. We didn't want to be stuck in the end with a bunch of characters we didn't want to use or not having set up certain characters." So the Avengers was actually shot pretty much around the same time that Captain America was. So imagine if audiences had, maybe turned on Chris Evans as Steve Rogers and they didn't like him in the role. Marvel would be in massive trouble because they were essentially filming them back to back and Chris Evans had no break whatsoever between the films. So luckily, as explained in our last episode, the gamble paid off and audiences kind of fell head over heels for Chris Evans as Cap. And so the hunt for a director began. And as we mentioned in our episode for Iron Man, the director of both Iron Man movies, Jon Favreau, announced he would not be returning to direct any more installments, but, did want to be in the running for the Avengers. Now, most of the Marvel executives were happy for him to return, including Kevin Feige. But as the saying goes, everyone has a boss, even the bosses. Now, Kevin Feige's boss at the time was a man called Ike Perlmutter, and he was Marvel Entertainment's CEO, because at this time, Kevin Feige was head of Marvel Studios. And also Favreau asked for a salary that was a little larger than his payday for Iron Man 2, and Ike Perlmutter was always known for being, cheap, really. And they also kind of butted heads whilst on production for Iron Man 2, so he was actually turned down, unfortunately. Upon being told no, he was actually quoted as saying, "It's something that I'm being the executive producer on, so I'll definitely have an input and a say, but it's going to be so hard because I was so involved in creating the world of Iron Man. And Iron Man is very much a tech-based hero. And then with the Avengers, you're going to be introducing some supernatural aspects because of Thor. How do you mix the two of those? It works very well in the comic books, but it's going to take a lot of thoughtfulness to make that all work and not blow the reality that we've created." You can't help but feel for Favreau a little bit, but he took it on the chin, and he still said, as he did before, that if there were any more Iron Man movies, he'd still like to return in an acting capacity as Happy Hogan. So the director role eventually went to Joss Whedon. He was the showrunner for Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and he previously helmed just one feature film before. That was called Serenity, and it was actually it was a major box office flop. But his choice of being a director kind of makes sense as well. I mean, as a Buffy fan anyway, because have you ever seen Buffy, Colin?
No, I haven't, mate.
And Rob, you've seen Buffy, haven't you?
Yeah, but it was a long time ago. I don't think I watched it in order either.
It's one of your
Right,
favourites,
okay.
isn't it, George?
Sorry?
It's one of your favourites, isn't it?
Yeah, big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Every season of Buffy had what they called a big bad to defeat. It would be someone that would be the season's main villain. And every single season would focus on our core group of characters coming together to eventually, by the time the season finale rolled around, to be a team and put aside their usually many differences to then defeat the big bad. So take season 3, for example. The team that defeated the big bad comprised of a vampire slayer, a teacher's pet from high school, a high school dropout, a cheerleader, a good vampire with a soul, a werewolf, and so much more. And it sounds utterly ridiculous on paper, but as does a billionaire, a big green rage monster, a soldier from the 1940s, and a god of thunder all coming together to take on aliens invading New York. It's just Whedon's approach to telling these stories with a straight face is all what, to me, makes them all a success, really. So Whedon, as well as directing, he also asked if he could write the script on his own. And as always, there was loads of different drafts. The only things he was told by Kevin Feige and Marvel was that the film obviously had to feature all of the heroes we'd previously seen, and the villain was to be Loki. Everything else was up to him. In his first draft, he was unsure that one villain would be strong enough to take on the Avengers, so he ended up creating a second villain, that being Ezekiel Stane, the son of Obadiah Stane from Iron Man 1. And upon handing this script into Kevin Feige, his response is quite well known at Marvel Studios. He got to the end of the script and he looked at his fellow producer, Louis Desposito, and said, "Louis, it's all wrong, but look how good it is. This is really good wrong." So Joss Whedon actually said that was a massive ego boost and didn't look at that as a negative at all. They liked the script, but it just wasn't what they wanted, so they sent him back, really. Now, as we know, all the cast were going to return for the Avengers, apart from Edward Norton, who Marvel quite publicly parted ways with. Now, at Comic-Con, which is like the nirvana for movie geeks all around the world, Kevin Feige held a presentation on Marvel films and brought out all of the cast of the Avengers at the end. And just when you thought the noise in that room couldn't get any crazier, Feige then said, and introducing as Bruce Banner, otherwise known as the Hulk, Mark Ruffalo. And the roof just pretty much blew off. So we actually did mention it in our Incredible Hulk episode that he was in the running to play the Hulk, but got pipped to the post by Edward Norton. So he was counting his lucky stars that he got offered the role and starting that role in the Avengers as well. Now, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's good news to repeat, I guess. Production was fairly drama-free. It finished on time and within budget, considering it was a massive budget anyway. And all stories from behind the scenes were positive. So just before the Avengers was released, the highest grossing opening weekend of all time was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. It was in the Guinness Book of World Records for having a $169.2 million opening weekend. It took that much money on its opening Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, its first 3 days. So upon releasing Avengers, Marvel had their eyes on that ballpark figure. At least getting close to that number would mean they were on track to having one hell of a franchise on their hands. So upon its opening weekend, it took $207 million, just obliterating the record previously held by Harry Potter. It also became the fastest movie ever to reach 100 million, 150 million, and 200 million. If there was a record to smash, it did it. So by the time it left cinemas, it was the third highest grossing film of all time.
Harry Potter and the audacity of this bitch.
I know. So it actually ended, by the time it left cinemas, it had a box office of $1.5 billion. Today, though, as it stands, it is now the 8th highest grossing film of all time. Because let's just say we have some other films to come as well. So critically, it was a success. Reviews were full of praise for pretty much all aspects of the film. And when fans were sort of asked who their favourite characters were, it surprised everyone. The responses weren't Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. The main response was the Hulk, really. Hulk merchandise just sold out worldwide. So not only did this film bring together all of our loved superheroes in one big film, it also kind of reinvented the Hulk with a successful recast and just created a new fan favourite as well. Which brings me to the question I've been wanting to ask, I think, since episode 1. Colin, what did you think?
Man, they smashed this one out of the park.
I got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps.
They absolutely raised the bar on this one by so many levels, all from every aspect. Man, I had so much fun watching this today. just as a disclosure, I did actually watch this only a number of hours ago. We normally do the podcast on a different day this week, but we've rescheduled it, and I don't know how that's going to work because it's obviously fresh, but I haven't had a load of time to just sort of
hasn't digested.
And yeah, and obviously, you know, it's not the shortest film in the world, and there was a lot going on. So you might have to bear with me if you ask me a question and I go, shit, you're gonna have to remind me a bit more about that. But nah, man, I had a lot of fun with this. I really loved it. Yeah,
that's what matters to me. And yourself, Rob? Initial thoughts on the rewatch?
Well, listeners of the show will be unsurprised to hear that I watched this slightly differently to maybe how you and Colin might have watched it.
Let's hear it.
Audio commentary facts. So, when asked what he would do with the project if given free rein, Joss Whedon reportedly said, "What I would do will be to make things as awful as possible for everybody involved." He means the characters when he says this in the commentary. But then the next sentence is, "I'm referring to the characters and I'm referring to the crew." So I'm not going to do any more audio commentary facts for the rest of this episode. I don't really want to hear what Mr. Whedon has to say.
Yeah.
That's very true, yeah.
Problematic.
Twat.
Just one thing on going back to the bit you were talking about a minute ago. How normal is it to give a big sort of Hollywood massive budgeted film just to one single writer and saying go with it? Is that normal, or is it normally there's teams and rooms of people on it and stuff like that?
Usually it comes from lots of previous drafts. So there'll be like, for example, I know you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy. I know you can't really remember it.
But, that's one of the ones. That's in the MCU, isn't it?
There you go.
Another one.
So there was a script for Guardians of the Galaxy wrote all the way back in 2007, before Iron Man. That came out in 2008. And there are aspects of that was still taken on by James Gunn when he wrote Guardians of the Galaxy. So that original writer, she still got a credit. So sometimes it's all lots of handed down from lots of different people.
It's quite ballsy though, isn't it? Just to give it to one person.
It's
especially when he's only done one movie beforehand. I mean,
it's like an independent film studio. It's weird. It's what Jeff Bridges said in Iron Man 1? He said it was like making the biggest budget student film ever because of that independent kind of attitude. But the weird thing about Joss Whedon is that he had actually written a lot in Marvel Comics. Like he'd written some quite successful runs in X-Men and things like that. So I think that gained him a lot of kudos that
Oh, okay,
he knew
right, that makes a bit more sense. Yeah.
He'd know what he was doing. Yeah, but you're right. It is mad that
It just
he was
seems like a
given-
lot of. Well, I mean, for him, obviously, a lot of pressure, but at the same time, it's like if they had come back with, I guess, if the script had come back and it was terrible, they would have just said in a bit and got someone else in. But
Exactly.
yeah.
You'll notice later on in other films when it comes up in the opening credits, written by, there's usually about sometimes 2, 3, 4 names on there.
Yeah.
It's very rare that there's one name on there, but it happens sometimes within the MCU for sure. So in terms for me and the Avengers, I love this film so much. It's pure popcorn, it's pure entertainment, and it's also a near miracle. So like I said when comparing this to Buffy, on paper this shouldn't work. Because as Johnny Fav said previously as well, look at Tony Stark. All of his films very tech-based, all based in science, and then watch Thor. Look at the extravagance of the Asgard scenes, the way language is even used in the script. He can also fly, and he has a damn, magic hammer. So how on earth was this going to be possible to get all these characters to share the film together and not have it feel a bit silly? But they did it. And I know we'll get into it in a minute, but, every single time, once we get to that moment in the Battle of New York, where all of our heroes are standing in a circle, waiting for the enemy to approach, the music swelling with Alan Silvestri's, incredible score. And that circle consists of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. And no matter how many times I see this film, I just sit there, I get goosebumps, and just think to myself, they did it. They got to that point. It's mad.
I think this was the viewing in which I figured out what makes this work over other team-up films that have happened. We'll get to it, but I think of saying what this watch did, I think I suddenly had this eureka moment of, oh, okay, I get why this works now. It suddenly, I've always just been it works, I'm happy that it works, let's not question it too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's all starting to make a bit more sense today.
How many times have you guys seen this one?
Oh, jeez.
I mean, at least 10. This might be the 10th or something like that.
I saw it multiple times at the cinema.
Same.
Yeah, I've watched it a lot.
Wow.
But it came out 9 years ago or something like that. So I'm gonna watch it a lot. So let's get our teeth into this bad boy and let's do a deep dive, because I think this is going to be quite the deep dive. So the Asgardian Loki encounters the Other, the leader of an extraterrestrial race known as the Chitauri. In exchange for retrieving the Tesseract, a powerful energy source of unknown potential, the Other promises Loki an army with which he can subjugate Earth. Nick Fury, director of the espionage agency S.H.I.E.L.D., and his lieutenant Agent Maria Hill arrive at a remote research facility during an evacuation, where physicist Dr. Eric Selvig is leading a research team experimenting on the Tesseract. Now, Agent Phil Coulson says that the object has begun radiating an unusual form of energy. The Tesseract suddenly activates and opens a wormhole, allowing Loki to reach Earth. Loki takes the Tesseract and uses his scepter to enslave Selvig and a few other agents, including Clint Barton, to aid him in his getaway. Now, when I say I love this film, the opening has never felt entirely thrilling for me. It has what I would call a TV feel to it. There's something about the scale that doesn't feel overly massive to me. I think, maybe in order to justify Nick Fury needing to call the Avengers, it doesn't feel like a world-ending event to me yet. But it obviously does at the end. But, but in this sequence, I will say I was so happy for Colin. Because obviously you said Loki was your high point in Thor.
Yeah, man.
And you didn't believe for 1 second that he was dead. And you were hoping to see him return. So how happy were you to see him come through that wormhole at the beginning?
I was extremely happy, and also, I mean, I thought that visually it looked amazing at this point. There was that wide shot of the actual Tesseract opening up the portal and everything. You could tell that the budgets must have gone through the roof for this one, because all of the gripes and stuff I had in the previous ones about things looking like, sort of video gamey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was all gone, man.
There's some sequences in this film in terms of the special effects and the CGI that's almost photorealistic. It's mad.
They shot that in NASA, apparently. The
Wow.
That opening sequence. That's why the roof is like so huge.
I like the addition of Loki having that like spear, whatever it is.
His scepter,
that was
yeah.
nice. He didn't have that in Thor, did he?
Don't think so.
No, I think no.
No.
At least I don't remember him having it. So that was a nice sort of because obviously Thor's got his hammer, so it's nice for Loki to have
Yeah,
a decent
another
weapon as
weapon
well.
of choice as
Yeah.
well. So, Rob, how does this work as an opening scene for you?
I'm with you. It does feel a bit TV-ish, but then it's odd because where we left the Tesseract, it was in an underground bunker, and it's like just the idea that an Asgardian has it needs to be, confirmation of a threat enough, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I got to admit, when I saw it in the cinema and it did that whole, what do we do moment with Coulson, and it comes up with the Avengers. Or in the UK, Avengers Assemble. Yeah, I mean, it was that was a good moment. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the sort of chase and the opening bit, poor Hawkeye.
Yeah. Even Jeremy Renner has gone on record to say that Avengers wasn't the best experience for him because he finished reading the script and was like, well, for half of this film, I'm being some sort of blue-eyed guy who's like some sort of sheep to Loki. But he gets his moments to shine towards the end, that's for sure. So in response to the attack, as Rob mentioned, Fury reactivates the Avengers Initiative. Agent Natasha Romanoff heads to Kolkata to recruit Dr. Bruce Banner to help trace the Tesseract through its gamma radiation emissions. Coulson visits Tony Stark to have him check Selvig's research, and Fury approaches Steve Rogers with an assignment to retrieve the Tesseract. Now that was a short description, but I think we're going to be on this section for a little bit. So shall we start with Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner? Colin, a decent recast? Do you miss Edward Norton?
Man, I wish that we had a Mark Ruffalo Hulk standalone movie. Because, not even throwing any shade at Edward Norton or whatever, it's just what you said at the beginning, which was that it was, very well received from critics and fans, and also their favourite character, a lot of them was the Hulk. It was mine, man. Yes. And literally a few films ago, I was like, I don't care about the Hulk and all that kind of shit.
But I just don't find him interesting. I don't think I like the Hulk.
But man, I mean, I thought Mark Ruffalo was great, and I picked up on a few little character traits that I don't know if he put them in himself or whatever, it was scripted, but like he didn't make eye contact with a lot of the characters throughout the film.
He's a ball of anxiety.
Yeah, and I felt like that was just a great insight into the life that he's been living previously up until this point, and I just wish that there was a standalone film of his, man, because but I guess he's in however many other Avengers there are. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're not done with the Hulk.
But even just him as the Hulk, like looking slightly still like Mark Ruffalo, and it just worked way better.
Well,
really
for this
it.
film, with the Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton one, that was all done just on a computer. For this one, it was all motion capture. For example, whenever we see the Hulk, most of the time, it is literally Mark Ruffalo on set wearing this massive suit with the Hulk's face above his head to match the height.
Oh, really?
And that's him on set. He did all the motion capture, did all the movements. So, he went full on for this as well.
Yeah, I'm still obsessed with the Gruffalo. How good is that? Like, even in that first scene, he's about to cross the road and those military trucks go by and he just turns his back to him, like he's so anxious and worried about the authorities. And there's another little moment in that scene with Black Widow where she says, like, I would have thought you wouldn't want to break your streak of not hulking out. And there's just a little cot in the scene, which I've read. I'm not going to do the trumpets. I've heard that this wasn't in the script at all. The little moment that he says, well, I don't always get everything I want. And he pokes at the baby's cot as he says it, and that was Mark Ruffalo's choice in the scene to be like, that line, out of everything, he's like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's what he wants. He wants normality, he wants family, he wants all this stuff. But he can't have that because the Hulk.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
He's so good. So he was one of my favourite actors, before the Avengers. He's in my second favourite film of all time, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Such a Ruffalo hipster.
I am,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I was a
I
massive
liked him
fan
before
before
he
he
was
was
the
the
Hulk. He's in, Zodiac, Brothers Bloom, The Kids Are All Right, Shutter Island, all of these before being cast as Bruce Banner. So I went nuts when he was cast as well. So maybe I'm a little biased, but to me, he is Bruce Banner from now on. And like we said, Colin, he's full of this nervous energy, and he brings a physicality to the role as Bruce Banner, not just as a Hulk. He's always wringing his hands together or shifting his eyes or not making eye contact for it. So maybe he's always like looking for an exit, knowing he could possibly transform at any point or anything like that. And yeah, the scene where he's approached by Natasha Romanoff, I think is great. I love the script in this scene. So everything from him realizing, they've lured him away from the edge of the city, to him thinking SHIELD only want him to swallow the Tesseract instead of actually wanting him to track it, to that moment of him pretending to get angry to see how Romanoff reacts. And it's worth saying here that Scarlett Johansson is just as good in this scene as well. So let's continue on with the cast. So, Colin, Scarlett Johansson, a good addition to the cast, unnecessary, an improvement from Iron Man 2 at least?
Definitely an improvement because, she didn't really get to flesh out much of the character in Iron Man 2 from memory. I was a little bit on the first bit with the whole phone conversation thing that was a little bit like, okay. But then her sort of, the little fight scene there was quite cool. The choreography was really good.
There's some good stunt work in that scene.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I thought that a really good addition. And this was the first time you actually find out that it's Black Widow. I'm sure everyone already knew about that, but it's the first time she's referred to as Black Widow, because I think she's only referred to as Natasha.
I think so too.
In Iron Man. But yeah. I thought the interactions between her and Hawkeye later on in the movie were really nice as well.
Yeah, and between them, it's you kind of think, oh, is there a romance angle between them? But I quite like they're just friends. That was a nice aspect for me.
Yeah, just been through a lot.
Yeah, so Rob, Scarlett Johansson in the Avengers.
She's great. You see, they kind of do two versions of that opening scene with her. Sort of, you think that she's the one that's in peril when she's the one that's got the drop on everyone, and she's in complete control of the situation. And I like that aspect of it. There was an element that I was a bit sort of, okay, it's I think it's a director's trait to sort of have those sort of women who look like they're in a certain situation and then aren't in a certain situation. I thought, is this a Joss Whedon trope? Even at the time when I first saw it, like, is he writing her as Buffy kind of thing? Mm-hmm. But as that quickly fades away, like Colin said, she's given a lot more to do, and she does it in such a sort of slick way that isn't like showy, like, oh, this is how she's doing it. It's like you almost have to keep up, and she does it on a sort of drop of a hat.
Yeah, I think there's a beautiful setup as well to Banner transforming into the Hulk in this scene too, because Natasha Romanoff is the world's greatest spy, afraid of no man and can always get herself out of situations no matter how dangerous. But it's that moment when Banner does pretend to be angry that there's this incredible moment where she sort of lets the facade slip a little bit. She's absolutely terrified in that moment. They're very careful of making sure the camera notices that she shakes a little bit. And it's that makes the eventual transformation scene later on in the film so much more effective, because now she's trapped to him before he does eventually transform back into the Hulk.
Yeah,
now, as mentioned as well, Fury visits Steve Rogers, whereas Coulson visits Stark. Now, I know it's a little simple and maybe a little cheesy, but I love the transition between these scenes as well. I picked up on it in this time. So the line we hear before we cut to Steve Rogers in the gym with his punching bag, that line is, "This war will be won with soldiers." Immediately cut to Steve Rogers. And then there's a discussion about the Tesseract, and Steve Rogers then says, "You should have left it in the ocean." Cut to the ocean, and we see Stark, finishing up the power for Stark Tower. It's really simple but effective writing, I think.
It keeps it going at such a pace, doesn't it? Each scene kind of leads naturally into the next one, and you're not sort of waiting for these like title card setups of each character. It's just sort of like, okay, we need soldiers, bang, right, we're back with like Cap, and that whole sequence of him punching the punch bags,
which as a straight man is a very strange scene to watch.
It does things. That's for sure.
It does things.
But it's also just the way it's shot as well. The camera does the comic timing of that camera when he sort of knocks that one off the wall, and then you sort of unveil there's a row of them, and he just calmly picks another one up and carries on. It's just really nice introduction to where he is after we left him in his film.
Yeah, for sure. So, in Stuttgart, Germany, Barton steals iridium needed to stabilise the Tesseract's power, whilst Loki causes a distraction, leading to a brief confrontation with Rogers, Stark and Romanoff that ends with Loki's surrender. Now, while Loki gets escorted to S.H.I.E.L.D., his adoptive brother Thor arrives and frees him, hoping to convince him to abandon his plan and return to Asgard. So, Rob, how did you find the scene in Germany? At mainly like the museum and stuff like that. It's a little action light, but I think Tom Hiddleston as Loki is incredible in this scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favourite films as a kid was the Christopher Reeve Superman films. Both the first, I mean, I love the second one as well. Grown up, sort of could see the problems with it, but Terrence Stamper's Zod doing his whole like kneel before Zod when Loki walks out and he's all sort of full of the showboating and like kneel before me and all this sort of thing. It's just so good, and like I know it's a little cheesy and a little on the nose, but that bit where the old boy is like, "No, I'm not kneeling to you," and
I will not have you talk cheese about this scene at all, Rob. I love that moment.
it's not cheese is the wrong word. I think it's just one of those sort of moments where it's like it feels, I don't know how to describe it. I love it.
Okay, on the nose, maybe.
Yeah, I would say it's on the nose. I wouldn't say it's, but it's just like, okay, so you're in Germany and then, okay, I don't know. It's like the scene was sort of, it feels like it was set in Germany for that line.
I can see what you mean now. By setting it in Germany and having them sort of indications at that line, it's saying something, which is, on the nose. We'll stick with that.
I also like as well that when Cap arrives, he says, like, last time I was in Germany, every man thinking he was above everyone else. But, like, the majority of the people are still kneeling in that scene, so Cap still, like, stood above them.
Colin, does Loki at this point still live up to the hype that you'd set yourself up for, really? Were you still happy to see Loki as a villain by this point?
Most definitely, yeah. I liked them. I think the beginning of that scene was it when he was getting the eye?
Yeah.
That was really cool. And also I think at maybe the first sort of minute or so of that scene, you were just hearing the score in the background. You didn't have any.
There was a small orchestra in the sort of museum playing, and that was just the music. Yeah.
And yeah, I thought, like, I mean, to be honest, at this point of the film, and actually a lot of the points throughout the film, I don't know what this says about me, but I agree with a lot of the shit that Loki was coming out with, and I was like, this guy makes some good points, even if he is trying to destroy the world, he's coming up with some pretty good points at the moment.
Like, sit down, you daft old man.
Colin's like, I agree. One of my favourite moments is actually, and Rob's already mentioned it, it's during this Germany sequence. It's when the old man stands up to Loki. I love that bit. When he makes, everyone kneel. And he says he won't kneel to men like him. And Loki's response are, there are no men like me. And the perfect response is, there are always men like you. Oh, come on. Yeah. It's really good.
It's really good.
And also, did AC/DC really need to come on when Iron Man pops in?
That's literally
I can't hear AC/DC without thinking of you now.
Jesus Christ, man. I was just shaking my head as soon as I heard that.
I'm going to read my next note here, word for word.
Go on.
It's at the end of the Germany sequence that we finally get to see some of our heroes share a screen together as Tony comes out to aid Steve and Natasha. He makes his entrance by playing Colin's favourite band, AC/DC.
I don't even like dislike them. It's just that seems too on the nose for me.
Right,
I don't
yeah.
know why. It's just like classic rock band. It's just like
Yeah.
Anyway,
I talking of Tony, because we kind of skipped over his introductory thing where he's now with Pepper.
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
think that
yeah.
works better now? Does it feel a bit more natural?
it felt way more natural. I actually think that if they didn't have that kiss at the end of Iron Man 2 and it just flipped to what you see here, I think that would have been a better,
More natural progression.
Well, it's just like clear. Yeah, it would be like oh shit, they're together now. Like a bit more of like a cemented on it rather than just being tacked on at the end of that movie just for the sake of it. Because that still rubs me up the wrong way. But yeah, I thought. I mean, Pepper wasn't in it a whole lot after that, but yeah, her time in it was cool.
There's a really nice moment I like where he's sort of saying to her that she's going to go to DC, and he's like, "Oh well." She's like, well, you've got homework. He's like, what if I didn't? And she says, you mean when you finished? And he gives her this look as if to say, like, it's the fact that he wants that more than he wants the showboating and the hero. You know, he'd rather be doing what they're doing that evening, having a drink, celebrating, setting up this new thing, than doing all this heroic stuff.
Which is a little unlike Tony from what we've seen.
Yeah,
so
it's
far.
a nice little snippet of something different, like a change. And I like that they don't do these sort of like Whiplash style, no pun intended, sort of tonal changes with him. It's all very like tiny little moments that build, you know, to say like at the end of this film, it builds to something more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem so much that you're like, oh, okay, so he's a completely different person than he was before. He's still Tony.
It all feels natural, yeah. And plus, it's got the great line of when Coulson turns up in the lift and Pepper goes, Phil! And he says, his name is Agent.
Yeah. I really liked his character throughout this as well, Agent Coulson.
Yeah, I mean, Coulson, he's very much in the background for most of the first 5 films we've seen. And this time they were like, no, we're going to make him like...
We were saying about how, like, what makes this all work together and all the madness of it all. It's because all of the films have had Coulson, all the characters, our chief characters have got Coulson as a link. Coulson's a fanboy of Cap. He dealt with Thor and that whole situation. It was like his project. And he's dealt with Tony, like he's in the first Iron Man film. So even if you take them characters and you throw arguments and split them as far apart as possible, they've still got that one connecting thread together, and I think that's what makes it work. Even though he's an Asgardian, Thor still will agree with Tony and Cap that Coulson is a good man.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes it work.
Yeah, and the scene when it's Coulson, isn't it? Yeah. When he meets Captain America in that sort of little ship or whatever it is that they're in the plane.
He's a Stephen
That's
Hawking.
funny, man. Yeah, like I thought he had some really funny dialogue throughout this, and I felt like again a lot of my gripes in the previous movies with the humor was a little bit too slapstick and almost sitcom in places, and that kind of went for me in this one. Yeah, I felt like the dialogue was, or at least the comedic dialogue was, much more to my taste.
Avengers is a really, really funny film.
Yeah,
it really, really is. So, and of course,
good body language as well. There's a bit where Cap leans up on the ship, like puts his arm up, and Coulson does the exact same thing while he's chatting to him. Just these little moments. It's it's got the wit in spades.
So of course, and continuing on with this sequence, it's not much longer before we get another one of our heroes into the fold, and it's Thor as he arrives. As we said, he arrives to take Loki, and then we have an action set piece between Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. And of course, it makes complete sense story-wise to have these guys fight each other before a team is created. So what did we think of this sort of mini little fight scene in the forest, Rob?
It's pretty damn good, isn't it? There's moments where it's quite dark and almost too dark to see what's going on at places. There's some real nice moments. I think the bits where it does shine are just seeing them interact. Like how does Tony react to Thor? He calls him Shakespeare in the park, and does the whole "does mother know if you wear her drapes" things. all that stuff's great, and watching them bounce off each other. But it's the first time we see how their combos are going to work. So if Thor hits him with thunder, with lightning rather, he's going to supercharge his suit, and if he hits Cap's shield, it's going to decimate the area. And it's sort of planting that seed early on. Okay, right, so if you combine that with that, you'll get this. And the film's really good at doing that at different points. There's a bit where he headbutts, Tony headbutts him, and then Thor headbutts him back, and there's a little dent on the Iron Man helmet, which is just real nice little moments.
Great. Colin?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot more to add, really. I thought it was just a nice back and forth of seeing, or Thorf, should I say, of seeing.
Oh no, Rob,
no, we won't do that again. We won't do that
yes.
again. I thought
He
it was
likes
a
the
nice,
Avengers, and he said Thorf. I'm so happy.
It was a nice back and forth of seeing their abilities and yeah, just seeing how they've interacted with each other and I did laugh at the Shakespeare line as well, because that was one of the things I didn't really like about Thor's character, is it was a bit too theatrical. So and I feel that throughout the film, actually, the dialogue when they're digging at each other, and like they're kind of hitting on points that I can imagine people that didn't like the movies were probably talking about. Like, you know, like negative critics were saying, oh, Iron Man's too this, blah, 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 too that. And it almost felt like they were just like, should we just lean into this? And, you know, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, some of the scenes when they start butting heads, I mean, we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
Like, some of the dialogue, like, it is spot on. I love when Stark turns to Steve and says, everything special about you came out of a bottle. That is one stonker of a line. But in terms of this fight scene, Rob, you've pretty much got exactly what I've got noted down as well. I've said, you know, the fight scene is okay, but to me, it's more about the dialogue and the little small creative beats within this fight scene as well. So, you know, any doubts that we had as to whether scenes were going to work that contained, for example, Thor and Tony Stark, just vanish the second Stark walks up to him and says, doth mother know you weareth her drapes? Because I remember sitting in the cinema at that point, and as soon as Stark said those lines, I just relaxed a little bit. I was like, oh, it's going to work. And yeah, in terms of like the little beats I mentioned, I love when Thor, exactly as you said, he uses thunder to try and strike down Stark, but only then to power up the suit by 400%. And then obviously it ends the scene by answering every comic book nerd's question. What would win in a fight, Thor's hammer Mjolnir or Steve Rogers' shield? And the way, because it's made out of the world's strongest metal, and the answer is neither, of course.
Yeah.
There was a scene as well of characters meeting beforehand that it was when I felt comfortable, because being a massive Hulk fan, I'm really enjoying Chris Evans's Cap when they meet on the helicarrier, and you know, he introduces himself to Banner and he says, like, oh, I hear you're, you know, a gifted mind or something like that along those lines. And Banner's first instinct, he said, is that the only thing you've heard about me? And Steve said, it's the only thing that matters. And it's like
everything you need to know about Steve Rogers in that line.
But then what I found interesting watching it this time is the first thing that Tony says to Banner is, he says, I love what you did in this field and this field and this field, but I'm also a big fan of how you turn into a rage monster. So he like almost accepts all of him, which is just interesting, the two different ways they look at it. Like he almost sees it as an insult to say, I can see he sees the monster as a curse, whereas Tony sees it as, yeah, mate, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Right, so this next section is massive. This could be a long episode. I know we've said it. So, after a confrontation with Stark and Rogers, Thor agrees to take Loki to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s flying aircraft carrier, the helicarrier. Now, upon arrival, Loki gets imprisoned, whilst Banner and Stark attempt to locate the Tesseract. The Avengers actually end up becoming divided, both over how to approach Loki and the revelation that S.H.I.E.L.D. plans to harness the Tesseract to develop weapons as a deterrent against hostile extraterrestrials. As the group argues, Barton and Loki's other possessed agents then attack the helicarrier, disabling one of its engines in flight and causing Banner to transform into the Hulk. Stark and Rogers work to restart the damaged engine, and Thor attempts to stop the Hulk's rampage. Romanoff reluctantly fights Barton and knocks him unconscious, breaking Loki's mind control. Loki then escapes after killing Coulson and ejecting Thor from the airship, whilst the Hulk falls to the ground after attacking a fighter jet. I mean, where do we start? So this whole next sequence is just packed full of brilliance. to the great scene where all of our heroes are in the same room as each other, and pretty much every other line is gold. You've got the first one where they first meet around in the actual helicarrier, but you've also got the scene in the lab as well, like I mentioned, where Steve gets the horrible line from Stark saying everything special about you came out of a bottle. We've got the wonderful moments of Banner and Stark creating a bromance. Black Widow getting the truth out of Loki in regards to his motives by sort of manipulating the god of mischief himself, to the wonderful Hulk transformation sequence before then he fights Thor, and the death of Agent Coulson. It's just packed. So, Colin, how was all of this working for you at this point? Because I can guarantee you now that 2011 George was sitting in the cinema thinking he died and gone to heaven.
Yeah, I mean, I was enjoying it for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the timings of the film. I don't know what time we would have been at this point in the movie, but it was all just absolutely steaming by. And you're enjoying a film when you're not even thinking how long's left or how long has it been on for, or checking your phone, or I need to go for a piss or whatever. And a couple of things about just the general being in that whole helicarrier. Helicarrier. It was good for me because it was one of the first times where you kind of saw the Shield, how vast and big it was, the amount of employees that they have on there, and all of the. I mean, you probably would have seen it already before this point in the movie, but I just remember when you first see that on that helicarrier, it's like.
No, it makes sense because you're very right, because at that point, Shield is almost Nick Fury, Romanoff, and Coulson, maybe a couple of other people in the background.
Yeah. So I think the only gripe I had with this film was probably I'm just not very sold on Nick Fury's character as being the director of this giant agency. It doesn't come across, even everything just down to his dialogue and the way he kind of carries himself. To me, it doesn't. That's the only thing. If I had to sort of say something that I wasn't quite into in this film, it would probably just be his side. And then also when you do see this giant, all of the employees and the whole crew's involved in that, and then you think, this guy's the director of all of this? It just didn't, it was a little bit...
I like the man playing Gallagher.
Yeah.
Thought no one noticed.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Robert Downey Jr. improv that line on set and said, that man's playing Gallagher. He thought we wouldn't notice. And then in the reshoots, because obviously all these films have the reshoots, they decided to put the insert of the guy playing Gallagher.
Yeah. It's nice. There's so much good stuff. It's that, we could be here all day, but there's moments like you said, when they first all ran that table and you got Tony calling in Point Break. You've got Steve trying to keep up with all the science references.
Is that what happened?
I understood that reference.
Yeah.
And I love the moment where Thor's like, he may be, Loki is of Asgard and he is my brother. And he's killed 80 people in the last 2 days. He's adopted. Just so good. There's so much, each of them, just it proves that Whedon knew how to write each of these characters. He's great at writing. It's quite rare that you get someone who's able to write those individual characters so strong. Yeah. Well, at this point, anyway.
Yeah, when they're all in that room together and they're kind of all, having a bit of a back and forth, and taking the piss out of each other and stuff. Yeah, it was done really well. It almost felt like this weird, dysfunctional family environment. And then the minute shit hit the fan, and there was, I think, was it the explosion happened? I can't remember what the line was, but a couple of the dudes, they kept saying a line of dialogue to each other, but it was more in an aggressive fashion.
So it's Stark. No, Rogers says to Stark, he wants to fight him. Basically, he says, "Put on the suit."
That's it.
And he's like, "Yeah, well, I'll do this." And he's like, "No, put on the suit." And the second the explosion hits, he's like, "Put on the suit." And then Iron Man agrees. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool because it just showed you, it is a bit like a dysfunctional family. You can all be at each other's necks and stuff, but when you really need to, come through and help each other out, it's forget all that shit. We've got work to do. You know? I really like that. That was nicely done.
Completely agree.
I'm so surprised they got away with the Loki bit where he calls Black Widow a mewling quim.
So that confused a lot of people because we had to sort of read up on it once it came out. And a mewling quim, and as he's screaming it at Natasha, he's almost spitting as he says it. It's a quim is another word for a vagina. And like a mewling is like crying. And what a line to put in essentially a Disney film, screaming at a woman, calling her a mewling quim. It's out there.
They just knew no one would understand what it was.
But yeah, I think that's how they got away with it.
He couldn't be screaming what it really was.
Yeah.
But it's just that moment where she's like, "Oh, so Banner's your play. That's what you're doing."
Yeah.
And just that moment of being like, "I got you."
Yeah.
But that scene, we talked about Dutch angles in Thor. That scene where they're arguing and the camera just starts rotating slightly as the scepter is sort of looming in the background.
Yeah.
Like that's how it should be done, I feel. Because by the end of that scene, you know something's not right, and they're all a bit heightened. They're not as angry as maybe they would be if that wasn't in the room. It's kind of the impression you get.
Yeah.
But there's so much great stuff. There's a moment, like we were saying about they got away with mewling Quim, but there's also the moment where Banner says, "Yeah, I got low, and I put a bullet in my mouth, and the other guy spat it out."
Yeah.
So holy, obviously it's a reference to the scene they didn't do in Incredible Hulk, but like that's
some dark shit, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Ruffalo
I love that the scene,
sells
wasn't
it. Yeah.
Yeah, like the shame when he says I got low. I thought,
Yeah.
so good.
Oh, I also thought it was really nice to see Captain America's character, Steve.
So like the Poundland one, Captain American.
Captain American. Stan Rogers. Steve, yeah. It was really interesting because while all the other characters were starting to see between the lines and realise that, you know, they're here for more reasons than they've initially been told, things like that, it really played up to the fact that Steve Rogers' character was just an all-out soldier, because obviously, you know, when you're a soldier, you don't ask questions. It's you just listen to what your orders are, and you just don't, you know, you get on with what you're told. And it was cool the way they did that. It was like he was the only one that was sort of like so unaware of the fact that you can get kind of there's other reasons to why you have to do things.
Yeah, almost offended when Banner and Stark start saying, "Come on, something's fishy."
Yeah,
he's almost offended by it. Another moment I absolutely love during this whole sequence as well. I'm actually obsessed with this moment. It's when Hulk jumps onto one of the fighter jets whilst it's in mid-flight, proceeds to smash the ever-living hell out of it. And just as the pilot hits the ejector seat, Hulk catches him in midair and then throws him away. I mean, what a moment.
That guy has had the worst day ever. Imagine Fury walks in. He's like, right, go on, get in the jet. Why? What do you want me to do? I want you to shoot at something. Just don't ask what it is. If you see something green, shoot at it. All right, yeah, sure. But he was thinking, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
I quit.
As much as I'm
this.
loving that you get to see all these amazing moments for the first time, Colin, it's also such a shame you didn't get to experience moments like that on the biggest screen possible.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Oh,
just the sound alone and the screen, everything. Yeah, man.
The moment that he turned into Hulk, I was just so happy with how they did it, because they managed to do that thing of having it in the shadows, but also you saw it at the same time. There's a bit where she says something like, "I swear on my life that we'll get out of this," and he just yells at her like, "Your life." This guy's not quite so Matt Berry. Your life. He and just like yelling, and that whole sequence of her trying to escape him and him running down the hallway behind her.
Yeah.
Like, he really felt like, of all the people in the Avengers that he could have turned into the Hulk in front of, she was the one that was most like, she could have died from it.
And it's all from that wonderful setup at the beginning, because we know how terrified she is of him anyway. So good. So to continue, Fury uses Coulson's death to motivate the Avengers into working as a team. Stark and Rogers realise that for Loki, simply defeating them is not enough. He needs to overpower them publicly to then confirm himself as the ruler of Earth. Loki uses the Tesseract and a wormhole generator Selvig built to open a wormhole above Stark Tower to the Chitauri fleet in space, launching his invasion. Now, I know we mentioned it in maybe our criticisms of Iron Man 2, that it kind of, that was the first scene. That was the first film where we properly got introduced to Nick Fury, who is supposedly the best spy in the world. As Stark puts it, he's the spy. I do like that Nick Fury gets to be a little bit naughty in this part, because maybe manipulate is too strong a word, but he does trick our superheroes into feeling like they had something to, well, avenge. So the death of Coulson is already sad enough, but it's that little guilt trip he puts on Steve Rogers as well. That's the cherry on top. You know, he says, "Oh, I guess he never got you to sign these," and he throws the trading cards at him, and the blood sort of slides along the table with the cards. Only for us to find out that Coulson never actually had them on him when he died. That, to me, is a lovely little character moment. I think everyone in this film gets at least one great moment. To me, this is Nick Fury's. And that's saying something, considering later he gets to shoot a rocket launcher.
He's completely manipulative, though, in that moment, because you imagine, right? Imagine you walk into a room, I'm on the floor, just been impaled by some spear from a Asgardian, and you watch me die. You had the last word. I have my last words with you, and you think, not, "Oh, I should probably mourn now." You think, "Hang on a second, where did he keep those cards?" He's got to have his keys on him somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Maria's on the phone. What's going on? What's going on? Where's Coulson? Just 2 minutes. going through his locker. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Manipulative.
Yeah. So, Colin, we lost Agent Coulson.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, this is going to come out wrong, but I'm glad it happened, just because it shows you that, you know, you watch some TV shows or some movies or whatever, and whenever someone gets in danger, you're like, they're not going to die. You know, like, they're seen later, they'd be fucking in a hospital bed alive or some shit, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me that thought, oh, he's not going to die, is he? And they're just going to, you know, find some way of saving him last minute. So, like, from a non-emotional point, I was kind of glad that they did let him die, because it just shows you it's like they're not scared of killing off characters, which I like in films and TV. But yeah, it was like, I mean, I grew quite fond of the guy throughout the film, so it was a little bit gutting at the same time.
Yeah,
you know?
it's typical that the film where he actually becomes a full-fledged character.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has a bit of a love interest going on. And I don't really, most people, because some people miss it. He had a love story in this film, and it's all played in the background. So it's when he first meets Pepper at Stark Tower. He mentions, he's seeing a cellist somewhere in some part of the country. And then when him and Stark first enter the helicarrier lobby, Stark's saying, just let me know a date. I'll give you a jet. You can fly out there and see her. And so they always throw in these little lines that Coulson's actually got a lot going on outside of S.H.I.E.L.D., only for them to then kill him off. It's quite cruel, really.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on those things, actually.
It's very, very small. It's all in the background,
yeah. Makes it even sadder, really,
It does.
Get a prequel.
So,
I've done a prequel.
A prequel? Yeah, Coulson, no.
There's a lot of films to go through. The rom-com.
Can you imagine seeing a young Coulson?
And so here we go. The Battle of New York. Rogers, Stark, Romanoff, Barton and Thor rally in defense of New York City. Banner eventually arrives and transforms into the Hulk, and together the Avengers battle the Chitauri whilst evacuating civilians. The Hulk beats Loki into submission. We will get on that bit in a moment. Romanoff makes her way to the generator, where Selvig, freed from Loki's mind control now, reveals that Loki's scepter can actually shut down the generator. Meanwhile, Fury's superiors from the World Security Council attempt to end the invasion by launching a nuclear missile at Midtown Manhattan. Stark intercepts the missile and takes it through the wormhole towards the Chitauri fleet. The missile detonates, destroying the Chitauri mothership and disabling their forces on Earth. Stark's suit loses power and he falls back through the wormhole just as Romanoff closes it. Stark goes into freefall, but the Hulk saves him from crashing into the ground. So again, I have no clue where to start. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Trott. Rob, the Battle of New York, worth all the hype and build-up, or a nonsensical, over-the-top action scene?
I was so worried, because before it came out, people like the last 45 minutes to an hour of this film is all battle, and I thought, oh, that's too far the other way. We have Whiplash that was like 1 minute, and now we're gonna have, but it works. It really, really works. I mean, from the moment you watch them all sort of getting back together, sort of suiting up, there's a moment where Banner's in that, he's fallen through the roof of that warehouse, and that guy's, Harry Dean Stanton's like, you got a condition, all that stuff. It's that it starts kicking off, and you just sort of think, oh, like, I can't wait for. I was sat there in the cinema going, I can't wait to see Hulk kick off. And what I like is that you get two very different Hulks through this film. You get a Hulk that's been born out of Banner trying to resist him, and then you got a Hulk that's born out of Banner going, go on, mate, go for it.
Yeah.
And they're two very different sort of characters almost. It's strange. Yeah, I love it. This is what I've done basically, because I know this is a different sort of episode. I've written down a list of the little moments that I love.
Rob, I've done exactly the same. I have not gone, oh, and this bit, then this character does this.
Is this what happens when you...
Yeah, I've listed the moments I love in the battle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I had seen this film 10 times so I could have done the same thing, but I apologise, I didn't do that.
I guess the way we could do it is if one of us reads at the list.
Throw them at me and I'll give you my...
The other person agrees whether it's on their list, and Colin can say what he felt about that bit.
Yeah. One thing. Can I bring up the elephant in the room of this? It comes up a few times in the film. How are they all communicating with each other? Because don't give me this shit. They've got headsets on, because I was looking out for these little things. There's one time early on where someone puts their hand up to their ear and speaks, and I'm like, oh, okay, then they have got something. But then that never happens again, and they're just. An entire city is literally like falling to bits around them, and they're talking like how we're talking to each other now. I'm not saying it's like a breaking point for me with the movie, but it was just like a question mark of...
I'd say Stark has his headset, and that's how he's communicating with people. The Hulk is off doing his own thing. He's off smashing.
But even when Iron Man and Captain America are trying to fix the ship at the beginning... How are they talking to each other? Because let's be fair, they're on the side of a fucking aircraft, so it's not exactly like we're sat in a quiet room.
I would say that in the script they're saying they are wearing earpieces, but if you think about it in terms of a film, especially in terms of what it's like visually and continuity-wise, if every scene a character's touching their ear,
no, I get it.
I
get it.
Yeah, you just have to suspend disbelief.
Surely I'm not the only person to have ever thought that.
It's the first time I've heard it.
Have you ever watched honest trailers on YouTube?
I don't think.
Well, maybe avoid it till you've watched more Marvel films. But they basically do a trailer, like a parody trailer of a film, and the one for Avengers is like they mention that exact point of how are they talking to each other?
Okay, I'm not the only one that picked up on it then.
No, you're not. It's once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. It's brilliant. Another thing I want to point out as well that I only noticed this time watching it through. Banner/Hulk goes through the whole of this section from him being in that warehouse to the end, not wearing any underwear whatsoever. Because he's nutty when he falls through the warehouse, and the guy just throws in some trousers. He's not got any pants or boxers. So man, he's lucky that those trousers didn't split when he transformed. That's all I'd be worried about. Look, once I'm gone, I'm gone.
This is literally the type of shit you pick up on when you're watching a film for the 10th time, isn't it?
Yeah. It's out of my control now. If I transform and these trousers that a random warehouse worker give me do not give, everyone's going to see everything, and the Hulk don't care.
No.
He's not a prude, is he? Let's be honest.
God's sake.
Anyway, throw me some of these bits you like.
See if we get the Colin seal of approval.
Do you want to go first, George? Should we take turns?
What have I got? Okay, the beginning of the battle, just as we get a glimmer of maybe regret in Loki's eyes, where he wonders if he's gone too far. And just as soon as we think, are they going to redeem Loki? He then stabs Thor. Because Loki will never change. And much like Thor 1, we can't help but love him. He's he's too deliciously evil to hate. And it's such a, it's a balancing act. But Tom Hiddleston's performance with Joss Whedon's script, they really fully elevate Loki to an incredible villain. I love that moment.
Yeah, most definitely. And I agree, man. They did elevate his character, and he was my favourite thing about, Thor. So, yeah, I was very, very pleased with...
You was upset when the portal closed, weren't you? You was like,
yeah, I know. I was like, fuck, man, we nearly had him.
Nearly had King Loki. One of my favourite moments is, that's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry. When Bruce turns up, we got that moment where this big Leviathan space worm thing's coming down the street towards them. And Cap's like, you better get angry soon, Dr. Banner. He's like, that's my secret. And that's what was missing in The Incredible Hulk for me, was that it was all about adrenaline in that film. Whereas here it's like, no, I'm always furious. Everything makes me angry. I'm a big ball of rage. And all I have to do is kind of let myself feel it, and I'll turn into the Hulk. So he's always holding back the Hulk, rather than... It's the key isn't to get angry. The key is to let himself, stop holding back, which I think was...
It really makes it makes the Incredible Hulk look worse after you've watched this. The movie, The Incredible Hulk, which is why, because I remember you guys before you rewatched it recently, you were sort of saying it's one of the ones that you know, one of your least favourite out of the series, and I think like. I don't know if that continues to carry on, but obviously now for me of seeing this and a different person playing Bruce Banner and the Hulk, it's like, yeah, man. I mean, how frustrated is all the fans must have wished that there was a standalone Hulk with
they're
Mark
still
Ruffalo,
wishing
right?
it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Christ, because I would love to. I mean, I don't know how much more the character gets fleshed out in the series, but I'm hoping he's in. In it still in a big way. And yeah, it was like a one-punch knockout with that big old worm thing as well, wasn't it?
And the lovely. Transformations all in one cut as well. Yeah, it's all in the same shot.
Yeah, that was nice.
So my next one, I like this. To Steve Rogers taking control of Ground Zero, I guess that's what you call it, only to have one of New York's finest ask why they should listen to him.
Oh, okay.
To which Steve responds by knocking the smackdown out of the Chitauri, and then the cop then giving his fellow officers Steve's plan. Incredible moment.
Yeah, it was
the
nice.
comic timing in that beat before he then repeats the exact same plan is gold.
It's almost word for word as well, isn't it?
It's word for word Steve's plan. It's a wonderful moment. Keep going, Rob. Let's keep this going.
So, much in the vein of your Cap moment, this is another Cap leadership moment. And this is where he really starts to come into his own. And after they've had that real nice moment of everyone teamed up, he gives everyone their orders. He's like, right, get Hawkeye somewhere high.
You called him Legolas then.
Nearly called him Legolas, yeah. Brace yourself, Legolas. He goes through the whole list, gives out everyone great strategic sort of advice, and then ends with, and Hulk, smash. And then Hulk's grin before jumping off and kicking ass is one of that got like such a good reaction in the cinema when we went to see it. It's just everyone was just like a stone's throw from hollering at the screen.
Yeah. And combining that as well, there's actually a wonderful moment within that scene as well. And it's the same moment, again, where Steve is giving his orders to the rest of the Avengers. It's just before he starts giving the orders, Stark looks at him and says, "Call it, Cap." Because they've been butting heads this entire film, but in that one moment, with aliens and ships literally raining down upon them, egos are suddenly put aside, and Stark hands the situation over to the soldier. It's a goosebumps moment. I love that little moment where he allows Rogers to take control.
Well, that's the first time that Steve's aware of that, I think. But like, there's that scene with Loki where, Tony's having that sort of war of words with him, and he goes, right, let's do a roll call, and he goes through the list of what everyone can do, and he's like, there's the living legend that kind of lives up to the legend when he's talking about Cap, and that shows that his mind changed. Am I imagining it? There's a bit where he mentions his dad as well. So why did my dad worship you or something like that.
He mentions
In that
it
argument
to
scene.
He mentions it to Banner. He says
This
to
is-
Banner,
this is the
"This
guy
is
my
the guy
dad-
my dad
yeah.
always used to go on about." Yeah,
Yeah, which is goes to show why he's got a chip on his shoulder about him.
yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely, great stuff.
One thing that made me giggle throughout this entire fight or action sequence or whatever you want to call it was I couldn't quite tell who actually caused more damage to the city. Like, was it the Avengers or was it the whatever they're called coming from the sky? Because they were not giving a shit, man. They were throwing stuff into the buildings. They were letting all the cars just explode on top of each other. It just made me giggle a little
All
bit.
we'll
Didn't
say
really-
is interesting that you mentioned that.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, fair enough. But one thing
Next
that I
time,
think we
baby. Sorry.
Next time, baby.
One thing we skipped over was the bit when what's her name? Scarlett Johansson's girl, Black Widow, has that sort of small fight scene with Hawkeye when he's still blue-eyed. I just love the fact that she resorts to just biting his hand, and that's kind of what breaks the whole thing up. It just made me giggle because it's like, if in doubt, just bite someone. Like, you're the best spy in the world, but if in doubt, just bite someone. I loved it. Yeah,
It was almost like something out of an Austin Powers film.
Yeah,
The way that could have ended. Oh, you bit me on the hand. What are you doing?
Next bit. You or me, Rob?
You just did Tony's moment.
Yes, call it, Cap.
So I will go for
4.
Hulk getting revenge on Thor.
Yes, that was my next one.
Yeah, so you've had there's several moments within it, but it's almost the end moment of what's called the oneer. So it's like played out all as one shot, and we see Tony flying through the sky. You see Hawkeye on top of a building shooting arrows at various different ships. You see the ground where Cap's bouncing the lasers off of Tony and like getting a sort of working alongside Thor. Everyone's just sort of working in perfect unison in this real slick sequence. But then the bit that I think is just the most badass is Thor and Hulk on the back of a massive flying space worm, just like beating their way down the back of it until they get to the head. And Thor partially whacks in this bit of armor plating into its skull, and then Hulk just like leaps up and smashes it in, and then they ride that into a crashed building. Just badass. And then the kicker is, after all that, Hulk's remembered that he lost that first fight and just thumps the shit out of Thor.
Just completely punches him off the screen.
Yeah, in like a split second he's gone. It's like there's always something quite comical about the way people exit frames. There's like Django Unchained has a moment like that as well at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
It's like people just flying off comically out of frame.
If the
when it
camera
gets
had panned to the side to show where Thor went, it still would have been funny, but not as funny for the camera to stay completely still and just for Thor to vanish. Completely agree. And so maybe the biggest laugh of the whole film, for me anyway, is when Hulk, and notice how we say Hulk a lot in this, it shows how good he is when Hulk and Loki meet face to face.
Oh shit! Yeah.
And Loki, I would have loved to have seen your reaction to this, Colin. And Loki starts to give the typical villain speech, and Hulk does not care for it at all, and proceeds to grab him by the legs mid-sentence and throw him around like a rag doll. Colin, I bet that worked for you.
Oh, completely, man. Yeah, no, I was either laughing my head off or just a giant grin. I can't remember which one, but yeah, I loved that, man. It was because it's not what you expect. You're expecting another line of dialogue from Loki and then maybe some big standoff sort of thing. But it was just like, fuck you, man. I just grabbed him, smashed the shit out of him on the floor. Yeah, no, it was great.
Originally, do you know there was another plan for that moment? In which, so earlier on, there's a moment where Banner says, "We can't take what Loki says seriously. That guy's crazy. You can smell crazy on him." The original idea was that Loki, when greeted by Hulk, was going to surround him with a load of illusions that all look like Loki, and Hulk was going to smell which one was a real person and thump him. So he was going to smell the crazy on him. But I'm glad they went this way.
Yeah, that sounds
nice
cool.
too,
but to see Hulk smash him instead was much better.
It was the voice of the original TV Hulk as well, wasn't it? It's like a mix of Ruffalo and that original.
Oh, when he says,
TV
puny
Hulk
god at the end,
Puny god. Yeah, it's great.
Have you got any more?
I thought you'd like that. I really like. It's a really small moment, but I think it goes to what Colin was saying about Natasha and Clint's relationship. There's a moment where she's like, they're like in the heat of battle, and she's like, "Doesn't this remind you of Budapest?" And he's like, "You and me remember Budapest very differently."
Yeah, I agree.
It's
That made me laugh.
You don't have any idea what Budapest is, but it's just like immediately, they've got a history, and you get to see a little bit more of Hawkeye than you got for the rest of the film, and get an idea of how he is with other people. Because before then, he's just been sat in high up places watching things. It's sort of
So discussing how this sequence ends. So obviously coming into this film fresh, I think if you were told that one of our heroes was going to make the sacrifice play and lay down their life to save everyone else, I think you'd have guessed every other character before you came to Stark. And I think it's a great piece of character development that it is Tony Stark that makes this choice at the end of the film, showing just how far the character has come from the beginning of Iron Man 1. I love this little moment from Stark.
Yeah, and Cap calls it, doesn't he, earlier? It's like, you're not the man to make the sacrifice play, to lay yourself on the line and all that stuff. And yeah, I think it's there at the start, those little tiny changes in how he was in Iron Man 1 and 2. Yeah. And you get to see, right, what's going to be... I mean, when I first saw this, I was like, okay, what's the next change going to be? Like, what's the next little thing going to be? Yeah,
because you obviously still have to progress Tony Stark, don't you? Yeah. So what's the next version of him? That's true. So action sequences, and particularly sequences as long as this one, to me, can get so boring, so repetitive and monotonous as well. I'm looking at you, Zack Snyder. But this is constantly creative, it's always inventive, and all of the various beats, all the ones that we've mentioned, are all rooted in character. So we've come to know these heroes over the course of five films now, and nothing they do is out of character. So to wrap this battle up, for me, the Battle of New York is a triumph. And I think you agree, Colin.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I think if it had gone on for much longer, I think it would have started to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I get it, But overall, I thought it was very good. There was one eye-rolling moment where Hawkeye does like a backwards arrow to someone, and that kind of stuff just annoys me.
It was in slow motion as well, I think.
I think so, yeah. Like little things
Loki
like that.
catches it.
Oh, it's that one. Yeah.
No, not that one. I think there's one moment where he's just stood on top of a building, and it's just like he kind of, without even looking, just fires one behind him, and it just takes out.
It's whilst he's talking to Stark or someone on his invisible earpiece. Yeah.
But again, there you go. But if I'm picking that as the only part of a however long action sequence that I didn't really like, then yeah, they did.
Jeremy Renner's going to be well upset though.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be pissed.
The one bit he didn't like, and it was
me. So, in the aftermath of the battle, Thor returns Loki and the Tesseract to Asgard, whilst Fury expresses confidence that the Avengers will return if needed. Stark leaves with Banner, and Cap goes off into the horizon on his own. So there it is. That's our first Avengers movie. Did it...
I think you missed something.
Oh, go on.
Excelsior!
Oh, yes. That was right at the end, though, wasn't it?
Right at the end of the film, just when you thought it was not going to show at all, there's your old man, Stan Lee, sat there playing chess with someone else. He goes, "Superheroes in New York? Give me a break."
Which is great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Cheeky chess scamp. I've got him noted down as. But were you aware of bonus Excelsior? In a deleted scene earlier on in the film, Cap was out there in the world trying to reintegrate, and he's in a cafe and he's doing some doodles, he's having a nice cup of coffee, and the waitress comes by and chats to him. They have a small conversation. She asks if he's waiting to see Iron Man fly overhead, and she said, "You can stay here all day if you want, we got great wireless." And he says, "Do you mean the radio?" And she looks at him confused. To which Stan Lee turns around and goes, "Ask for a number, you moron." So he was originally going to be quite early on in the film.
She had actually quite a large part in the film as well. We do see lots of glimpses of her during the battle, hiding from certain Chitauri. She does give a look to Cap at the end of the film.
Oh, yeah.
And then she's in the newsreel footage at the end where she says, "Captain America saved my life." And have either of you played the game or games, The Last of Us.
Yes, first one.
She is Ashley Johnson, and she provides the motion capture and voice for Ellie in The Last of Us games.
All right.
That's not my trivia, but I just wanted to put that
Should
in
have
there.
been. 'Cause I like that.
It's a good job, isn't it?
So yes, that is our first Avengers movie. Colin, did it live up to the hype?
Yes, I think so. Because last week, after we finished the podcast, I could definitely tell that you were a fan of this film. Like the couple of things you were saying about it. And yeah, man, it took everything and it's just leveled everything up. And I really enjoyed it.
Good. That's very good to hear. So, let's discuss ratings. So, as always, I know you already know, all of our lovely listeners, what we're doing so far, but we're just going to say it anyway. We have an account on an app called Letterboxd, and what it does, we can create certain film lists and certain film rankings on here. The link to our Letterboxd account is in the episode description below as well. And what we're going to do is we each give a film a rating out of 5. Colin does, I do, and so does Rob. So then by the end, we should have our own individual rankings of the MCU. So, Rob, out of 5, where are we going?
So my highest so far has been 3.5. I didn't know the 4 last week, wasn't
you were
it? 4.
just about to go on 3.5 for Captain America, but you ended up going for 4. Yes.
Yeah, well that's good because this week's 4.5.
That's massive. Good.
The only reason I think it's getting a half down for me is because visually sometimes it looks a bit TV, as George said. But that's literally the only reason I would put it down.
Colin.
I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go a 4.5.
That's really good as well.
I enjoyed it, man. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed it.
That's epic to hear. And, strangely enough, I gave it 4.5 as well.
Nice.
It is so close to being a 5, but, even outside of the MCU, when it comes to giving films 5 out of 5, I'm extremely picky, so trust me when I say 4.5 is very, very high. So recently in an interview, Martin Scorsese was asked if he watches these Marvel films. He said he's seen some of them, but is sad, because even though they're popular, he wouldn't refer to them as cinema. Now, I in no way would want to disrespect the godfather of film, one of the greatest living directors of our time, but to me, this is cinema. It's sitting in a room full of people, popcorn in my hand, watching a huge green giant grab a half Asgardian, half ice giant in a penthouse suite of a New York skyscraper and essentially swat him like a fly. Sorry, Marty, that's cinema. So,
I'll say this. Silence didn't make me have feelings the same way that watching Chris Evans punch a punch bag did.
Sounds like Scorsese needs a couple of his mates to do a podcast called Scorsese versus the MCU. And then he might
hosted by
actually
Joe
change his
Pesci and
mind,
Robert De Niro. It's not cinema.
But can't you see, Marty? He started off really, really nervous and edgy, and now he's accepting his rage. That could be whoever you want
I
it
was
to
about
be.
to say, you should fill in the blanks. Yeah.
I wasn't going to ask.
And now let's do some trivia.
Let's do it.
Before we move on to trivia, I'm gonna let you finish. But first, it's a bonus fact. A bonus fact. He's only gone and done it. It's a bonus fact. Did you know that we've talked a lot about Marvel one-shots. So these are like short films that link in. But was you aware there was one for the Avengers that takes place after the Avengers? And it's called Item 47. You've already mentioned the name of the director as well, who is a producer at Marvel called Louis Despacito, who was a Marvel producer and has recently... Well, he's been involved in other Marvel projects, but we'll leave out what other ones he's directed. But it basically takes place after the Battle of New York, and it involves two robbers that are played by Lizzie Kaplan and Jesse Bradford, and they find a Chitauri gun that has been deactivated. But yeah, it's quite interesting that it's not just like a one little 2-minute gag. It's like a 10-minute film as well. Really
hell.
well put together. But worth checking out if you have the bonus disc. The bonus disc.
Yes, it's on the Blu-ray.
Right,
I
trivia.
don't think it's on Disney Plus. So take that, streamers.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, my Disney Plus was fucking about on this one.
Oh.
Luckily, it happened in like the 5 minutes before the giant action scene started, but it just kept buffering, man. And I was like, no, you can't be doing this now.
Weirdly, it's the American version as well, because the British version has Avengers Assembled as the title, and Coulson, you don't see the knife go through his chest.
Well, yeah, because in America they originally got a R rating, which is essentially a 15 rating in the UK, and it was because when Loki impales him, it did come through his chest and it went up quite far, and then that got the R rating, and they said, well, if you just CGI that bit out, we'll reduce it down to PG-13, essentially a 12, and they did, yeah. So there's different versions of that scene out there as well. So, Rob, you interrupted my introduction for the trivia to give me some trivia.
Yeah.
Thank you. Brilliant.
I was not going to make this my trivia. It's just a bonus fact, isn't it? It's a bonus feature fact.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Not trivia.
So, yeah, I mean, I like that as well because it does show that there are ramifications to the Battle of New York and the Chitauri invasion. And let's say, it's that battle is not forgotten in terms of where the MCU goes as well. Next time, baby.
You know too much for your own good.
Now that's what I call using the old head.
So, yes, trivia. I cannot remember who went first last week. God knows.
I think you did, mate.
I did.
Yeah, I think you did.
Perfect. Rob, over to you.
So,
Are we drawn at
The
this point? I'm going to let
Chitauri.
you finish. But are we drawn at this point?
how
No,
dare
I
you
think-
interrupt me?
No, we can't because we've done 5.
Oh, yeah.
3. It's 3-2 to Rob.
It's 3-2 to me, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
No pressure. So, the Chitauri, the swarm-like mass horde army, kill the big one, they all faint or something. But did you know the word Chitauri comes from... It's gained notoriety from writings known as the Reptilian Agenda, where a Zulu shaman and historian called Credo Mutwa, apologies, Mr. Mutwa, if I pronounced that wrong, and David Icke, a British conspiracy theorist, they posed that these reptilian shape-shifting creatures called the Chitauri have actually taken over Earth and are controlling Earth via an Illuminati. Now, this is genuine conspiracy theory. Now, Mark Miller, who is, to those who aren't aware, a cheeky comic book Scottish man who wrote things such as Kick-Ass and various big Marvel titles that may or may not be referenced in future films, so I won't go too in-depth. He used the idea of them being an alien force for the first time within a comic book run called The Ultimates. I just thought it was interesting that they based it off some real-world mad conspiracy, and that is in a Disney film.
I like that a lot, man. I like that a lot.
And you mentioned it's a Disney film. This isn't my trivia, but Colin, it's actually worth mentioning that it was after this was released, Disney came calling. So Marvel Studios were then essentially approached by Disney to say, we still want you to be and act and run as an independent studio. We're just happy to then distribute it for you.
Take your money.
Give you more budgets and stuff like that.
They just smelt the money, man. It's because it did well at the box office. They're like, come on, let's take over.
Mickey gave him a call.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kevin Feige and Ike Perlmutter then did say, we're kind of doing okay as we are now. And then Disney were like, we'll give you $4 billion. And they're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, got him.
So Marvel
enough,
Studios then...
I imagine it playing out like that Cap scene with the cop.
Yes.
When he's like, Disney are like, we'll give you we want to do this with distribution. We'll help you with marketing. We'll give you bigger budgets. Why should we listen to you?
Give you $4 billion.
$4 billion.
You can help with
Okay, we'll take
distribution.
this.
You can help with this. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, So they officially now became Marvel Studios, but now kind of spearheaded and ran by Disney as well. So my trivia. So way back in 1996, when Joss Whedon was holding auditions for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he had a guy come in to read for the part of Xander. Now, Xander's one of the main characters, and he's one of Buffy's best friends in high school. The guy that got the part was a man called Nicholas Brendan, and he made such an impact and was so funny. His audition for Buffy in 1996 ended up inspiring part of the script for the Avengers itself. So during his audition, he was full of he was full of nervous energy, much like Xander the character is too, and he nailed the audition. He blew everyone away. And immediately they knew they'd found Xander. Now, after he did his line readings, everyone in the room was dead silent. Mainly because they were just in shock as to how good his audition was. So now Nicholas Brendan kind of sensed that the air in the room had changed. So in order to try and break the silence, just blurted out, "Well, that was a lot of fun. Who wants to go get some shawarma?" Which Joss Whedon found so funny that it was still in his head almost 15 years later. So when he sat down to write the Avengers script and had the scene where they kind of make you think Stark's dead, but you kind of know he's not, he didn't know what one of Stark's first lines should be when he wakes up, and he wanted it to be really random and off the cuff as Tony Stark would do it. And then suddenly his mind went back to 1996. So wrote the line, "Does anyone want to go get some shawarma?" And that made the climax of the movie. And that wasn't from IMDb. Thank you, guys.
Dude, that was great, man. You've got the point for sure.
Oh.
That was a good one.
Boom.
Son of a beast.
Oh, hometown friend.
Yeah, he's just one of those reptilian Chitauri trying to control the points.
Oh, dear.
So at the end of phase 1, points-wise, we are 3-all.
3-all, yeah. So this is the end of phase 1 then?
Yes.
Because they mentioned phase 2 a bunch of times throughout the film, and they were referencing
The word phase 2
2
keeps getting referenced. So at the beginning,
yeah.
when they arrive to find the Tesseract sort of malfunctioning, they do say start phase 2.
Yeah, and then it's on like a screen in the background at some point as well. I'm pretty sure it pops up a couple of times, and I didn't know if that was in
The World Security Council mentioned stuff like phase 2, but I think phase 2 in the world of the MCU is developing the Tesseract to make weapons.
Okay,
That's phase. That's
right.
to them what phase 2 is. It's got nothing to do with our phase 2.
Oh, okay.
So then to wrap up, as we've just said, we've done it, gents. We have completed phase 1, and what a pleasure it has been. So, Colin, any regret starting this adventure with us, or you still loving it?
Coming into watching the Avengers today, because I hadn't been that blown away by the last couple of films, Thor and
Captain
whatever
America.
the one was before that. Yeah, Captain America. That's it. So obviously I was still excited to do the podcast and chat to you boys once a week and all this, that and the other. But there was a point where I was starting to think, am I just not going to be vibing with these? I'm just going to have to come back every week and just be like, yeah, it didn't really do anything for me. And then you guys just fucking geek out for an hour. But after watching Avengers today, man, it's literally just injected me with like adrenaline to get on with this shit. So I'm buzzing now. Yeah, I'm buzzing for it.
Perfect. So any idea what comes next? Like, to hazard a guess, where would you like to go next?
I mean, I want more Avengers, but I very much doubt they're going to just smash back into the second one with knowing that there's more individual movies to come. Whew, it's tough, man. It could be... Yeah, I don't have a clue. If I'm honest.
That's fine. So to kick off phase 2, we are spending even more time with Mr. Tony Stark as we head to watch Iron Man 3. As always, it's been a pleasure, boys. Rob, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Colin, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Next time we meet, let it be in peace and friendship.
This is as far as you're going to get tonight.
Such valuable stuff. All in a nice work.
Sweet dreams, little friends.
Look out! He's escaping! I fear we have not seen the last of him.
Oh, just when you thought we'd finished phase 1, there's still a little bit more gas in the tank. So, in a mid-credit scene, the other confers with his master, saying they did not anticipate Earth to fight back like they did. And with the heroes they currently have protecting Earth, to try again would be to court death. His master then turns his face to the camera and proceeds to smile at the thought of it. Colin, do you know who this is?
Not a clue, but I can imagine we're going to be seeing a lot more of this
Okay.
guy, I guess.
So
guy?
the only thing you heard people say when leaving the cinema was, who was that guy at the end?
Oh, right, okay. So I didn't miss anything
So
then.
you had fans of the comics who left the cinema going, well, the Avengers are fucked. Because this guy, we're not going to go into loads of details here, but this guy is called Thanos.
Oh, that name rings a
So
bell. Yeah,
maybe
I've-
later on in later films we'll start digging a little bit more into who this Thanos fella is. But we'll just say that
He's a problem.
He's a problem, and he's gonna cause some trouble. So in the comic books, at least, we'll just say that he is the cause of death for many, many Avengers. So that's what made the fans leave the cinema going,
Okay.
"Uh-oh."
Yeah. Did you guys know? 'Cause with the comics, or were you one of the ones going, "Who the hell's that dude"?
To be honest, I wasn't massively into the comic books then, so I did have to sort of go, hang on, who's
Who's
that
that?
guy? Like,
Yeah.
and I had to read up
Yeah,
on him
yeah.
a little bit. And once I found out his storylines in the comics and what he's done and who he's killed and stuff like that, I was like, oh my god! Because obviously they're not going to do direct like
Sure,
adaptations of the comics, but knowing they were at least introducing this guy, I was like, oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite early on, so it's knowing what's going to stay being used and what isn't going to be used. Is this just another next time baby, or is this something else? He's one of those people that I recognised him, like I had seen art of him in the comics,
Okay.
so I was aware of him, but not of his story or really the in-depth stuff. I had to do a bit of research when I got out of the cinema so I could look smart for my friends. Do you know who he is? Yeah, I know he is. Of course I do.
So we
Don't want to talk about it though.
So Thanos, isn't it?
It's that guy, isn't he? You know who he is.
So we also get treated to one last credit scene, and I don't know how you reacted to this, Colin, but I love this one. So,
Oh wait, was there one after the credits as well? Oh no. I saw the mid-credit one, and then it came up with the rest, and I was like, "Oh, it's done,
There's
isn't it?" So I turned it off. Oh shit!
To the listeners, when George did that noise, he did a face that I could only compare to Mrs. Brown of the BBC sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys. I just sort of saw the little wig around his face in my head.
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't watch it.
so there
man.
is another one, but to be honest, it's about
No, because even on Disney Plus, after that bit,
it gets rid of the
box
credits,
goes
yeah.
down into the bottom. Yeah. So I
don't get
just
that on the
didn't.
Blu-ray. So, hashtag physical forever.
it's a nightmare. Yeah, on Disney Plus, but there is one more
Oh
scene.
shit!
It's actually
Sorry.
only a couple of seconds long. There's no dialogue. Rob,
Okay.
care to explain what it is?
It's just the Avengers sitting in a sort of almost ransacked shawarma shop eating food together.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
it's obviously it's a shawarma restaurant in New York. It's completely covered in rubble. There's one woman in the back sweeping up some of the mess, and all the Avengers are literally sitting around a table eating shawarma, looking a bit exhausted, and then it ends.
Okay.
But it's very, very, very funny, and it's kind of ridiculous at the same time as well. But it kind of shows that the sense of humour these films have about themselves as well. And this was actually a late addition to the film. It was actually shot after the premiere for the Avengers, so anyone actually attending the premiere of the film didn't get to see this scene. It hadn't even been shot yet. So Joss Whedon had this idea at the premiere. Since all the cast were together, he sort of proposed the idea. Can we just all get together tomorrow for like an hour and get you all in costume, just so we can show everyone just like eating shawarma at the end? They all thought it was a ridiculous idea, but a genius idea, and they all agreed. And now, but if you notice as well, maybe watch it. We'll send it to you after this, and we'll link it in the episode description for the episode as well. Chris Evans was actually, who plays obviously Steve Rogers, was in a play in Broadway at the time and was kind of sporting a beard at the time because the part of the role it needed it. So they just came up with the simple idea: just lean on your face. So Chris Evans in the scene kind of never looks up because then we'd see his beard. Yet again, utterly ridiculous. But hey, our world's greatest heroes have got to eat sometime.
And remember, you can change your score, but only once. So if news of this extra scene has pushed it from a 4.5 to a 5,
let us know.
Just let us know.
I think I'll stick with the 4.5.
So thanks for listening again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, stay nerdy.